Today we start a discussion of Latin grammar with a discussion surrounding the Latin verb. The reason for this is that when you have a Latin verb such as navigo, it can stand as its own sentence. In this case, the meaning is I sail. You don't need another complementary verb or a complementary word to help complete the meaning of the sentence. The verb can stand on its own, and that's why it's so important when you're translating Latin or trying to construct your own sentence. The purpose of this video is not to explain every single component of the verb using Latin examples or Latin translations. Really, this is for the beginner, and it's all about understanding what are all of the different parts of a Latin verb. Generally, I'm not going to explain every single odd and end part or piece, but just the most important for understanding most Latin verbs. And when I start to explain these rules, please keep in mind that there's always exceptions to the rule, especially in a language that's existed as long as Latin has. There's all sorts of irregular verbs, verbs that don't have all of the components, that are missing pieces, and these just rise because of random occurrences in the language or speech patterns, as it was, because this Latin was the language of the Roman Empire for thousands of years. The first component I would like to discuss is the conjugation. The conjugation can be said to influence the principal parts, or the other way round of the verb, and the principal parts denote very important forms of the verb. There's usually four, but of course there are exceptions, as with any rule. There are usually four principal parts, and they are very important forms, which can all be used to complete different meanings or form different meanings, depending on what you are trying to say. And each is used differently. How they are used specifically, that'll be the topic of a later video. The mood of a Latin verb can be said to impact its meaning. Usually mood is studied in a more advanced Latin course because it is more subtle than the other components. But basically, to boil it down for our purposes today, mood impacts whether an action definitely happened or whether it may happen. Some moods also have to do with speech patterns. Luckily, there's only 3 basic ones that you'll be seeing in the near future. Another important component is voice, and this determines whether it is active, I run, or passive, I was run over. Whether the action is occurring to the noun, whether the subject is performing the action, and this is usually a very important distinction. In the English language, we use an extra word. In Latin, it's actually built in. It's more compact. It's built in to the Latin verb. The next subdivision would be the tense, and this basically determines whether it's in present time or past time. But there are 6 tenses, and we will be learning the specifics of each tense in a later video. Then you have the person, and this determines whether it's first, second, or third. I, you, he, she, it. And then there is number, which, as you should know, is whether it is singular or plural. And the difference between singular and plural is you have 1 man or you have 2 men, 1 boat or 2 boats. So hopefully you have a brief overview, a high-level understanding of the different components of the Latin verb. Even if you can't apply them yet in translation or in original text or even modified text, you should be able to say, okay, I know everything that I'm going to have to learn to be successful with my Latin studies. Thank you for listening.